Victoria Collier is on the line with us, the author of a brilliant new piece in Harper's Magazine. She's a contributor to Harper's Magazine titled How to Rig an Election, subtitled The GOP Aims to Paint the Country Red. Victoria, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this day before Election Day as we go to confront these machines. I confronted an ES&S machine on Saturday here in Washington, D.C. when I early voted. And in fact, I actually had the election person come over because it was giving me weird results toward the end I couldn't quite figure out. And you'd think that, well, in any case, first of all, why don't you share with us what your research has come up with on this how to rig an election thing?
Well, you know, the piece in Harper's, it's about 7,000 words, and I would say it grazes the surface of our problem. It's a pretty serious problem, and it's been going on for a long time. People in the election integrity movement have been sounding the alarm on these computerized voting systems that we've got for really decades, and it's gone largely unheeded. And at this point now, we've got about 98% of our votes cast and counted by these corporate-owned, privately programmed, secretly programmed voting machines that not only malfunction, as you just mentioned, pretty consistently all across the country, to the point sometimes where they just derail elections and pretty much ruin elections. But also they're open to and vulnerable to hacking and to inside manipulation, insider rigging through malicious coding in the software that is not detectable in public logic and accuracy tests, which is what's done, on election day to say, look, the machine works. Well, the machine may look like it works, and in fact, it still can be programmed to flip votes, to shift votes, and really the voter and the election supervisor would never have any idea at all. So it's an enormous opportunity for insider fraud that would be largely undetected, which makes it different from, fraud in the past where, we may have had a lot of vote fraud in the past, but it was largely detectable if people were looking, ballot box stuffing and that type of thing. This all goes on inside the black box of the computer. So that's the incredible risk of using these systems.
Yeah. I was interested that in the article you mentioned Chuck Hagel and how he had gone from being president of what became ES&S Systems to running for the U.S. Senate. And the Washington Post called that election the upset election of the year, that he even carried African-American districts that had never elected a Republican. I wrote an article about that for Common Dreams back in 2002, 2003, whatever. It's still on the web. It's easily Googleable. And one of the reporters for, as I recall, it was The Hill. It might have been another publication, another one of the Insider DC publications, picked that up and was going to run with it the next day. Called me and said that Chuck Hagel's, either his chief of staff or his attorney had called and threatened to sue them if they carried the story. They carried the story anyway, and it got out there, and then it became public knowledge that Chuck Hagel was not the investment banker that he had run as, but actually the head of a voting machine company. This is just, it's very bizarre. I mean, the long history of this. Why is this so much considered the province of the right when you look at the really proficient hacker groups out there, the Anonymous, for example, they're generally considered to be on the left. If it would seem like if the entire nation's voting infrastructure was at risk from hackers, that Fox News would be hysterical that Anonymous is going to hijack tomorrow's election.
Well, Anonymous has threatened to hijack tomorrow's election, and I don't know whether they can or not. I guess if we all find out that Guy Fawkes has been elected president, we'll know that Anonymous hacked the election. But I've been saying this myself, that hacking, as opposed to rigging the machines, as opposed to, the right wing is inordinately connected to the voting machine companies.
Right.
That's why it's associated with the right, because you look at the ownership, you look at the financial ownership, and the key staff, and you see, I would say we're looking at like 80%, 90%, connection to Republican candidates, Republican causes. We've got enormous financial contributions coming from these voting machine companies to the right. So that's, of course, the huge concern, is that not only that the elections can be rigged, but that you've got one party that has their thumb potentially on the scale of the electronic voting machines. But, like you say, they can also be hacked from the outside. And I think what we're really looking at potentially is like rigging wars over the United States election system.
Right.
And that is a nightmare scenario that is starting to play out in this election already. If you check the news right now, we've got reports coming in from all over the country. People are saying votes are flipping from Romney to Obama. This is a whole new set of charges that we've never seen in previous elections. And
blue
it
shift
has now caused the Republican National Committee has sent out a letter to secretaries of states and election supervisors around the country saying, we are getting notices that votes are flipping to Obama. Therefore, we are asking that voting machine representatives be allowed to recalibrate the voting machines on Election Day.
Recalibrate?
And recalibrate.
Do you know the story of what happened to Don Siegelman in the middle of the night?
Yes, I do.
I mean, it was a recalibration, right? He went to bed as the governor of Alabama, and in one Republican precinct district after all the Democratic poll watchers had left, one partisan Republican discovered 15,000 with 3 zeros after it. It discovered 15,000 votes on his electronic tabulator, and all of a sudden Bob Riley was governor. And when Don Siegelman tried to complain about it the next day, he was, Right-Wing Talk Radio across the street went after him, and then Karl Rove went after him, and now he's in prison.
Yes, so. I know. And what does this mean, that we're going to be seeing recalibration of voting machines on Election Day by, partisan-controlled voting machine companies? And at the same time, we're finding out from the Free Press, Harvey Wasserman and Bob Petrakis in Ohio are exposing this news that ES&S and the Secretary of State in Ohio have installed uncertified patches on central tabulators in 39 counties in Ohio.
Right. We interviewed Max Cleland years ago. This happened in Atlanta. Well, you mentioned it in your article. This happened in Atlanta, too.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing, we're seeing the same scenarios playing out again and again. And I guess my message to your listeners is we really need to stop waiting until the weeks before an election to deal with this problem, because it's going to be the same in 2000.
Victoria, isn't the biggest meme here that we have privatized the beating heart of democracy, the vote? I mean, if you're going to privatize schools, that's a small crime against democracy. But the vote is how every other thing in democracy gets decided. It should be the last thing we privatize rather than the first.
That's how I'm putting it. I think not only it's been privatized, it's been corporatized, it's been computerized, and it's totally off limits to public control, inspection, accountability. So, it does not matter what party you're affiliated with. Everybody should be absolutely concerned. And this election is shaping up to be potentially worse than 2000 in terms of contested results.
Amazing.
And there's already thousands of lawyers on the ground. And none of this would be necessary if we actually had a transparent public vote count.
Amen. We should do as Ireland did. And they sold their voting machines for scrap metal just a few months ago. Victoria Collier, brilliant new article in Harper's Magazine, How to Rig an Election. Thank you, Victoria.